I just sensed and felt like that was going to be something really bad and really scary.
Country music legend Dolly Parton is known for her sweet smile, golden voice, and timeless charm. But even Dolly has her limits. In a shocking moment, the Queen of Country didn't hold back. She revealed there is one singer she considers pure evil. That's not something you'd expect from Dolly, who's known for kindness, forgiveness, and staying out of drama. So what pushed her to speak out this time? Join us as we let out the shocking backstory and reveal just who this mystery singer is. Dolly's opinion on this singer. There are few voices in the world more beloved than Dolly Parton's, not just for her music, but for her honesty, warmth, and the way she sees people. She's known for giving second chances, speaking kindly, and rarely stepping into controversy. That's why, when Dolly speaks with force or judgment, people pay attention. Especially when it involves another singer. This time, Dolly opened up about a figure she called something far worse than just bad or dangerous. Her words? Evil. It didn't come out of nowhere. The conversation started during a private exchange with a close friend, someone curious, maybe even a little reckless. The friend had been considering reaching out to a man whose history made headlines and sent chills down an entire country. When Dolly found out, she didn't push it off. She didn't laugh. Instead, she stepped in immediately. Those words weren't about fear. They came from a deep place of moral clarity, and they marked one of the few times Dolly ever drew a line so clearly. She wasn't afraid to speak up, and she didn't hesitate. It was later admitted that this particular moment stuck with them, not because of who the man was, but because Dolly, a woman of value and compassion, felt so strongly that he should be avoided at all costs. That rare, firm judgment from someone so gentle raised questions far beyond gossip. What kind of person could push Dolly Parton to such a harsh view? What had they done to earn a label so severe? And why was she so determined to stop any interaction with this singer? Was it a private conflict finally coming to light? A clash of values too deep to ignore? Or something far more unsettling? Whatever the reason, her words were clear, and the emotion behind them couldn't be missed. For Dolly to use a phrase that strong, you know it wasn't said lightly. In the late 1970s, Dolly Parton was no longer just a country singer. She had crossed into pop music, gaining worldwide fame with her voice, her look, and her magnetic personality. Around that time, she sat down with a man who would soon become more than just a journalist to her. His name was Lawrence Grobel, and he worked for Playboy magazine. The year was 1978, and what started as a formal interview slowly grew into something more personal. Dolly opened up to him in ways she had never done before. Lawrence Grobel was not your average writer. He was known for his deep research and sharp interviewing skills. He took his time to learn about the people he spoke to. Sometimes he would study them for weeks or even months before their first conversation. When he came to interview Dolly Parton, he was well prepared. Still, nothing could have prepared him for what it felt like to meet her in person. He later said that Dolly took his breath away. Her high heels, big blonde hair, and famous figure made her seem larger than life. Despite her small size, Dolly had a presence that left him stunned. Grobel was no stranger to famous faces. He had interviewed legends like Marlon Brando, Truman Capote, and Al Pacino. But even with all that experience, Dolly stood out. She wasn't just another celebrity to him. There was something about her energy, her honesty, and her sense of humor that made her unforgettable. In fact, he later admitted that very few people had ever made him feel the way she did. As their time together went on, Dolly became more relaxed. She started talking about things she normally kept private. It was clear that she trusted him. According to Grobel, when you spend days or even weeks getting to know someone, it becomes natural to connect. That connection showed in the way Dolly spoke during the interview. She was open, funny, and sometimes deeply personal. This wasn't just any celebrity profile. It became one of the most memorable interviews either of them had ever done. Dolly shared stories and thoughts she had never shared before. That honesty came from the bond they built during their time together. Grobel had a way of making people feel comfortable, and Dolly responded to that warmth. It was not just about asking questions and getting answers. It was about having real conversations. Grobel's skill as a writer came from years of work. He had written for big magazines like the New York Times, Rolling Stone, and Reader's Digest. He has also published over 25 books. His work earned him praise from some of the biggest names in literature. One famous author called him the Mozart of interviewers. Another said he was the most intelligent interviewer in the United States. That reputation was well earned. He didn't just talk to people, he got them to reveal who they were. Besides interviews, Grobel also spent time teaching. From the late 1960s to the early 1970s, he worked in Ghana through the Peace Corps. Later on, he helped create a professional writing program at a university and led it for several years. In 2001, he started teaching again at UCLA, where he gave seminars on interviews, journalism, and memoir writing. His passion for storytelling never faded. Even decades later, he was still working, still writing, and still being invited to judge film festivals around the world. Though his career brought him close to many stars, his time with Dolly Parton was special. There was something unique about that interview. Maybe Dolly could be real, even while living in the spotlight. Or maybe it was Grobel's talent for listening and asking the right questions. Either way, the connection between them led to one of the most powerful interviews either of them would ever have. Dolly Parton is known for being sweet and charming, but she's also sharp and knows when to draw the line. She is not someone who blindly trusts people. So the fact that she let Grobel in, that she allowed herself to be vulnerable, says a lot about how she saw him. He was more than just a journalist with a tape recorder. He was someone she could talk to, someone she felt understood her. During the Playboy interview, Grobel saw the real Dolly Parton. He saw past the hair, the dresses, and the beauty. He met a woman with dreams, fears, and strong opinions. He met someone who had worked hard to get where she was, and who never forgot where she came from. And for Dolly, that interview gave her the chance to speak freely, to be herself without judgment. Years later, the friendship they formed during that interview remained something special. Grobel never forgot the impact she had on him. In his words, she was unforgettable. And for those who read the interview, it was easy to see why. It wasn't just about fame or music. It was about two people having a real conversation, one that left a lasting mark on them both. Their meeting in 1978 proved that even in the fast-paced world of celebrity interviews, something true and honest could still happen. A writer met a singer, and for a moment, the spotlight faded just enough to let the real person shine through in what she thinks and values. Over time, Grobel and Dolly kept in touch. They talked, they laughed, and they trusted each other. It was the kind of bond that does not come often between a journalist and a celebrity. Later, Grobel interviewed Dolly again for Redbook magazine. Their connection grew even stronger, but then something unexpected came up. There was one moment when she showed a very serious side. It happened when her friend and interviewer, Lawrence Grobel, thought about doing something that she could not support. One day, Grobel's editor asked him if he would be willing to interview Charles Manson. Yes, the same Manson known for leading a group of followers in a series of horrific crimes. Grobel thought it was an interesting offer. His editor told him to take some time to think about it because the topic was very dark. Grobel's wife was against it. Some of his friends thought he should do it. He was caught in the middle. Then, out of the blue, Dolly called. She was just checking in, like any good friend would. During the call, Grobel mentioned the Manson offer. That was when everything changed. Dolly's voice turned cold, serious, and sharp. "You're a sensitive man, and he's evil incarnate," she told him. She didn't search for the words to use. She went on to say, "If you have anything to do with him, if you see him, if you talk to him, then I will never see or speak to you again." Dolly made her feelings clear. To her, Charles Manson was not just a criminal. He was the devil himself. She believed that even speaking with him could bring darkness into a person's life. She said, "His evil will affect you in some way, and I don't want to have anything to do with anyone who has had any contact with him." Then, showing her usual grace, she added, "Now, as I say, this is your life and your decision, and I don't mean to influence you in any way. I'm just telling you how I feel." But even as she tried to be polite, her next words were shocking. "To tell you the truth, that you even have to think about this concerns me." Grobel was stunned. He respected Dolly's honesty and felt the weight of her words. Here was someone he admired deeply, someone he had built a close friendship with, and she was saying she would walk away if he went ahead with the interview. That was not something he could ignore. In the end, Grobel said no to the interview. He passed on the chance to talk to one of the most feared criminals in history. He did it because he cared about what Dolly thought. He valued her friendship more than the fame or shock value the interview might bring. But he later admitted that part of him still wondered if he made the right call. Another journalist, Charlie Rose, interviewed Manson and even won an award for it. After that, the memory of that moment never left him. Dolly's strong warning, her firm words, and her deep belief in staying away from evil stood out more than anything. This incident showed a side of Dolly Parton that many may not expect. Behind the sparkle and songs is a woman with strong values. She is kind, but she is not afraid to draw a line. When it came to Charles Manson, she did not blink. She spoke with power, with care, and with a voice that left no room for confusion. To Dolly, some things are simply not worth touching, no matter how famous, tempting, or interesting they may seem. And as she said it herself, that man is the devil. She did not say it to be dramatic. She said it because she truly believed it. And in that belief, she showed the strength behind her sweet image. For Dolly Parton, light and darkness do not mix. And if anyone gets too close to that darkness, they will no longer have a place in her bright world. But come to think of it, why did Dolly feel this way about Manson? Could there be more to this? Let's get into some personal details about who Manson is. The pure evil of Charles Manson. Charles Mills Manson was born on November 12, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio. His birth name was actually Charles Mills Maddox, after his mother Ada Kathleen Maddox, a very young girl of only 16 years. The story of Manson's father is complex and sad. Ada claimed that Colonel Walker Henderson Scott, Sr. was his real father, a man who worked in mills, but was also known locally as a con artist. Ada even took Scott to court to prove he was Manson's dad. The court agreed in 1937, but Manson never really knew this man, who told Ada he had been sent away on army business and then disappeared from their lives. Before Manson's birth, Ada married another man, William Eugene Manson. This is where Charles got his last name, even after his parents divorced. Ada and William's marriage did not last long. Ada herself was troubled and often went drinking with her brother Luther, leaving Charles with babysitters. Trouble seemed to follow the family. Ada and Luther were arrested for mistreatment and other troubles in 1939 and sent to prison for several years. Meanwhile, young Charles was placed with relatives in West Virginia. When Ada was finally released from prison in 1942, she and Charles moved to Charleston, West Virginia. At this time, Charles experienced a brief period he later called the happiest of his life. But the peace was short-lived. Charles regularly skipped school, and Ada's drinking continued. She was arrested again for stealing, but was not convicted. The family moved several times, ending up in Indianapolis. There, Ada married again, this time to a man who had a bad habit of drinking named Lewis Woodson Cavender Jr. in 1943. Charles Manson's trouble with the law began early. At the age of 9, he admitted to setting his school on fire. He was often troublesome and was found stealing small items. With no stable home or guidance, by 13, he was sent to the Gibault School for Boys in Indiana, a strict place run by Catholic priests. The discipline there was harsh. Punishments included beatings for the smallest mistakes. Manson ran away from Gibault and lived on the streets, under bridges, and in the woods. But he was sent back to the school. He escaped multiple times. In 1948, Manson committed his first recorded crime. He stole from a grocery store, first out of hunger, but found a box with more than $100. He used the money to rent a room in a poor area and buy food. For a short while, he tried to live honestly, delivering messages for Western Union. But soon, stealing became his way of life again. Eventually, he was caught and sent to Boys Town, a juvenile facility in Nebraska. Not long after arriving at Boys Town, Manson stole an arm and a car with another boy. The pair went on to commit 2 other crimes before reaching the home of their friend's uncle, a professional thief. This man took Manson and his friend under his wing, teaching them the tricks of crime. After a raid, Manson was arrested again and sent to the Indiana Boys School, a reform school with a terrible reputation. While at the Indiana Boys School, Manson faced brutal treatment. Other boys went physical with him, encouraged by a staff member, and he was frequently beaten. He ran away 18 times. To survive, he developed a strange method he called the insane game. Pretending to be crazy, he made wild faces and sounds to scare off attackers. Eventually, he escaped with 2 other boys, stealing cars and robbing gas stations while heading west to California. They were caught in Utah and sent to a federal prison for driving stolen vehicles across state lines. Tests showed that although Manson was illiterate, he had a higher than average IQ of 109. However, his behavior was labeled aggressively antisocial. In 1951, Manson was moved to a minimum security camp in Virginia. His aunt promised to help him find work and a home after his release. But before his parole, Manson was caught physically mistreating another boy with a knife. This crime landed him in a maximum security reformatory in Ohio, where he stayed until his 21st birthday. Manson's life, before he became infamous, was full of crime, pain, and rejection. From a broken family, unstable childhood, and troubled institutions, he learned survival through fear and control. But his troubles didn't end when he got out. Instead, they grew worse, leading him to build a dangerous cult and commit terrible acts. After his early release from prison in 1954, Manson's life took a different path, but it was no less troubled. Instead of settling down, he went from place to place, getting into trouble with the law again and again. Over the next decade, he spent much of his time in and out of prisons and jails. Despite these setbacks, Manson tried to find some meaning by exploring music and spirituality, but his past and nature made his future dark. In the mid-1960s, Manson arrived in California during the height of the hippie movement. The times were full of hope, peace slogans, and new ideas about love and freedom. But Manson twisted these ideas to serve himself. He gathered a group of mostly young people, mostly women, who were vulnerable or searching for answers. This group became known as the Manson family. They lived together in a commune-like setting, following Manson's strange rules and listening to his strange talks about conflict and the end of the world. Aside from that, Manson also had a fascination with the Beatles, especially their 1968 album that shared the band's name. He believed their songs were messages meant for him. From their lyrics, he created his ideas about an approaching apocalypse, a terrible conflict he called Helter Skelter, a phrase taken from a Beatles song. He convinced his followers that they needed to survive this conflict by preparing to start it in secret. Music remained important to Manson. Through a lucky connection to Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, Manson got some brief attention in the music world. Wilson introduced Manson to a record producer named Terry Melcher. The Beach Boys even recorded one of Manson's songs, originally called Cease to Exist, but changed it to Never Learn Not to Love, and released it without crediting Manson. This rejection hurt him deeply and added to his bitterness. In the summer of 1969, the Manson family carried out a brutal series of demise. Over 2 nights in July and August, they brutally took the lives of at least 9 people in 4 different locations. Among the victims was actress Sharon Tate, who was pregnant at the time, and several others, including Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. The crimes shocked the nation. They were evil and senseless, and no clear motive was immediately obvious. At the trial, prosecutors argued that although Manson never personally took anyone's life, he was guilty because he ordered and planned the incidents through his control over the family. His belief in Helter Skelter and his conflicting ideology were seen as the reasons behind the acts. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi described Manson as the mastermind who wanted to spark a conflict and believed this particular incident would be the start of that conflict. Manson always denied ordering the acts, and some followers claimed the acts were meant to protect a friend named Bobby Beausoleil, who was arrested for a separate incident. Despite the denials, the court found Manson and several of his followers guilty of first-degree demise and conspiracy. In 1971, Manson was sentenced to life in prison. His control over his followers and the horrifying nature of the incident made his name popular, but for the wrong reasons. Manson spent the rest of his life in prison. His behavior remained strange and disturbing, often provoking fear and anger in others. He was denied parole multiple times. In 2017, Charles Manson passed on from complications caused by colon cancer. He was 83 years old at the time. His story is a dark example of how a broken childhood, conflict institutions, and dangerous leadership can lead to tragedy. Manson's life was a tragic path filled with pain, crime, and cruelty that ended in one of the most horrifying chapters in American crime history. Dolly Parton, known for her kindness and positive spirit, would likely have felt uneasy or even fearful about Charles Manson, considering how his life was marked by all this manipulation and chaos, everything that goes against Dolly's values of love, hope, and goodwill. While Dolly built her career on bringing joy through music and connecting with people in honest ways, Manson used music and words to confuse and control others for dark purposes. Manson's cruel actions, especially the horrific ways people lost their lives, would have been deeply disturbing to Dolly. She has always stood for respect and kindness, so someone like Manson, who twisted innocent ideas into evil plans, would have been someone she could never accept or admire. His behavior and the pain he caused would clash sharply with Dolly's gentle nature. Also, Dolly's background is very different. She grew up in a loving family in rural Tennessee and used her talent to inspire millions, while Manson's early life was full of neglect and crime. Their values, life choices, and the way they touched others were far apart. It's easy to imagine Dolly would simply have wanted nothing to do with someone like Charles Manson. Let's take a look at how Dolly's roots might have influenced her values. How Dolly Parton's roots made her different from Charles Manson. Dolly Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in a small cabin in Sevier County, Tennessee. She grew up as one of 12 children in a poor family. Life was simple and hard, but Dolly's spirit was bright and full of dreams. From a very young age, she loved music and often sang with her family. Her early life was shaped by the beauty of the Smoky Mountains and the strong sense of family, which helped her stay grounded even as she reached for the stars. Dolly's career started early. By the time she was a teenager, she was already performing on local radio and television shows. She moved to Nashville, the heart of the country music, to chase her dream. It wasn't easy. Lots of rejection and struggles came her way, but Dolly never gave up. Her unique voice, catchy songs, and warm personality quickly won people's hearts. Hits like Jolene and Coat of Many Colors showed her talent not just as a singer, but also as a storyteller who could touch souls. More than just a singer, Dolly is known for her strong values. She believes deeply in kindness, hard work, and giving back. Despite her fame, she never forgot where she came from. Dolly started the Imagination Library, a program that gives free books to children, encouraging them to read and learn. She also supports education and helps people through charity work. Her generosity is as famous as her music. She once said, "If you see someone without a smile, give them yours," showing her belief in spreading joy. Dolly's impact on music and culture is huge. She broke down barriers in country music, paving the way for women and other artists. She mixes wisdom and emotion in her songs, making her one of the most beloved singers in the world. Beyond music, Dolly acted in movies, wrote books, and even launched a theme park called Dollywood, creating jobs and fun for her community. She remains a symbol of hope and resilience, inspiring millions with her life story. However, Dolly's strong sense of good and evil helps explain why she would have seen someone like Charles Manson in a very negative light. Manson's life was filled with conflict, hate, and manipulation. Everything Dolly's values stand against. While she uses her voice to bring people together and spread love, Manson uses his influence to cause pain and fear. For Dolly, people like him represent the darkness she fights with kindness and light. In the end, Dolly Parton is much more than a music icon. She is a person who rose from humble beginnings to become a shining example of love, strength, and generosity. Her story shows how hard work and a kind heart can change the world. And by standing against hatred and evil, she reminds us all that kindness is the most powerful song we can sing. What are your best memories of Dolly Parton? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.